The importance of body language, presence, and getting big. This is Brian Cain with the Mental Performance Daily Podcast, and today's episode especially dedicated to the great mental performance coach, Trey Cobb. I got asked a question recently by one of our mental performance coaches about how do I train my athletes to have better body language and presence, and why is that important? Well, the reason why it's important goes right to Amy Cuddy, who's a social psychologist at Harvard, and her book Presence. And she has a great TED Talk seen by about 70 million people on the science and power of body language. And to oversimplify, she says, when you stand with big body language, if you power pose, you increase testosterone and decrease cortisol. And it kind of gets you out of the flight mode and into fight mode, essentially moving from fear into attacking, which is what we want to do as competitors and as high-level performers. So body language is critical. My mentor, Dr. Ken Ravizza, used to talk about getting big, and he would share the story about how he went to go work and study these heart surgeons who are the best heart surgeons in the world. And he would be in the locker room with them as they were discussing their kind of pre-operation brief. And then he would follow them down into the operating room to kind of evaluate and see how they were working. And he's like, when they walked down the hallway, they got big. They walked with presence. They walked with body language. And we took that concept and brought it into hitters walking to home plate with their hand on the barrel with big body language. We brought it into the UFC, practicing walking to the octagon with the fighters I work with at 10 o'clock in the morning on fight day when they fight at 9 o'clock at night in an empty arena, practicing walking in the cage and how they get in there. And the way that they're going to use their body language as a way to keep them feeling and acting more confident. So if you're a coach and you have athletes that struggle with body language, you've got to practice it. You've got to practice walking to home plate. You've got to practice walking back to the dugout after you strike out. Or I remember it was with TCU baseball, 2010. We were at San Diego State. We were facing a guy named Steven Strasburg, who you know is the great Major League Baseball pitcher at the time. He was in college. He was striking out 15 guys a game. He was the best pitcher on the planet, and he was in college. And we knew we were going to punch out a lot that night. We were going to strike out. So what we practiced on Thursday night, we practiced walking back to the dugout after striking out with your hand on the barrel, with big body language, looking out at the mound to make eye contact on the way back to the dugout, and walking past the guy on your team who's walking to home plate with confidence, so that you're not walking back like Linus dragging his blanket or walking around like Eeyore with bad body language. There's no reason to do that. You got to act how you want to feel. So act confident. Jake Arrieta, who won a Cy Young with the Chicago Cubs, is the best pitcher in baseball in 2015. He would write the word ace underneath his hat to remind himself that acting changes everything. George St. Pierre, the great Hall of Fame UFC fighter, 10-year undefeated champion, would talk about acting different than how we would feel and using fear as fuel, acting as if it were impossible to fail, even though we had that fear on the inside. David Goggins, a Navy SEAL, who we must look at and say, the guy's a Navy SEAL. He's an ultra endurance athlete. He's ran 250 miles at a time. There's no way this guy can have fear. Not true. He's just learned how to use fear as fuel by acting different than how he feels. And that's key. If you're going to be a great mental performance coach, you've got to work with your athletes on body language. You've got to practice it. Practice how they want to show up with that body language, with that presence. Show them Amy Cuddy's great TED Talk and discuss the importance of body language and physiologically and scientifically what it does for you to increase the testosterone, to decrease the cortisol, and let's start acting how we want to feel, not letting how we feel dictate how we act. That's a recipe for disaster. So let's make sure we act as if it were impossible to fail. We act as if we were the champion, and we carry ourselves that way. Then it's going to give you the best chance to become that person. Let's dominate today.
Thanks for checking out Mental Performance Daily with Brian Cain, an IRONCLAD original. If you like the show, be sure to leave us a rating, review, and comments. We'll see you tomorrow.
Are you a coach responsible for your clients' and athletes' performance and results? You know that mental performance is the missing link, but you're not quite sure what to do to coach mental performance? Great. I've got the solution for you. It's my Mental Performance Mastery Coaches certification, where I give you exactly how to coach the 10 pillars of Mental Performance Mastery framework. It's a framework that I've been using for 2 decades with elite mental performance coaching. If you head over to briancain.com/certification, you can join our course, our Mental Performance Mastery Coaches certification community this week only. Head over to briancane.com/certification and we'll see you there.